studios.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here, and right now, Vice President J.D. Vance is taking questions at the Lake Lucerne Summit Confab in Switzerland, trying to hammer out a formal settlement between the United States and the Iranians that necessarily includes Israel, Lebanon, the Gulf states. A lot of moving parts. So over the weekend, Israel launched retaliatory strikes into southern Lebanon, which led Iran to walk away from the table, which led Trump to threaten to blow up their country, which led to which led to hard feelings at the negotiating table. Leaving the negotiation venue, the Iranians altogether. But then officials from Pakistan and Qatar later resumed their mediation. And in a statement early today, Qatar and Pakistan said that the line of communication between Iran and the U.S. has been formed to avoid such incidents and enable safe passage for commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. Some fits and starts, I guess, to be expected, but this was Trey Yingst, Fox News, reporting on the tumult over the weekend.
President Trump telling Fox News that the U.S. may take over the strait in the future if they have to and collect tolls. The president described this as the United States being the guardian angel of the Strait of Hormuz and the Middle East. And the president said ultimately that would involve the U.S. taking 20% of the oil that passes through the strait. Remember, this comes in reaction to the Iranians saying they will close the Strait of Hormuz in response to Israeli strikes against Hezbollah in Lebanon. President Trump tells Fox News he spoke with Iranian officials overnight and said, you close it and you won't have a country. He went on to tell these officials, you won't even make it back to your effing country.
Uh-huh. Well, I don't know what currency the tough talk has with the Iranians at this point. I've heard a lot of tough talk over the last 7 weeks. And, opinions vary on the topic, but it seems like a summit that was supposed to deal with Iran's nuclear ambitions is now mainly focused on Israel's security concerns versus Iran's interests in allowing Hezbollah free reign over southern Lebanon with the ability to hammer Israel as best they can. Oh, and then there's this additional complication. The president of Iran, Pezeshkian, basically announced that Iran retains the right to enrich uranium, and he wasn't limiting it to domestic energy concerns.
Now, earlier today, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian said this about Iranian enrichment of uranium. The president also reacting to that. Take a listen.
We will not give up our right to enrichment, and they, too, will be forced to accept it. You all know what the so-called President of the United States was saying. He had made a complete 100-degree turn.
President Trump responding to that. Again, this is Trey Yingst reporting, Fox News.
During our call, responded directly to those comments by Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. President Trump told Fox News he better watch his mouth, he better shape up, or we'll take over the rest of the country.
Yeah, big talk from both sides. Lindsey Graham on Face the Nation yesterday discussing his time with President Trump on Friday, what he thinks will happen if a deal is not reached. And he's pretty skeptical that a deal will be reached, which may be indicative of Trump's growing skepticism. Hard to say.
Let's try a diplomatic solution. I think it's going to fail. What happens next? I spent 4.5 hours with President Trump Friday. Here's what I think will happen next. If this deal fails, President Trump is going to take the Strait of Hormuz over by force. The United States will control the Strait of Hormuz. We'll charge a fee for all those who go through to pay for the operation. And we're going to expand the Abraham Accords in calendar year 2026. We're going to get Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords, and which is the biggest change in 5,000 years in the Mideast. And if Iran contests control of the Strait of Hormuz by the United States, we will obliterate them. So to all the people listening, if this diplomatic effort fails, President Trump is going to take the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah. We're going to run it. We're going to try to get Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords to end the Arab-Israeli conflict in 2026. And if Iran continues to attack Israel and Lebanon, the new policy will be we'll hit Iran. So to the Iranians, if you're listening, when you use Hezbollah to attack Israel, I think the new policy will be we will attack Iran.
For more on all this, Joel Pollak, opinion editor at the California Post, joins us. Joel, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
So you've been, fairly sanguine about this deal, and at least in its MOU form, and then a little bit of from reading your posts on X a little bit over the weekend, a little bit of back and forth as the Iranians walked away and then came back. So what's your net of the events of this weekend?
Nobody knows anything.
Okay.
That's my conclusion.
Okay. Yeah. Right. That's it. Maybe.
The only thing that matters is that the Israeli military is not going to leave Lebanon, and there's nothing Trump can do about it, and there's nothing the Iranians can do about it. The only people with real concrete interests at stake are the Israelis, because they are being attacked by Hezbollah terrorists. So it doesn't really matter what is discussed in Switzerland as far as that reality.
Well, right, and I mean, sorry to interrupt on this too, but also, isn't it a bit strange to have a summit meeting where you're going to talk about a ceasefire in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah, and the those parties are not represented at the table?
Well, it's strange on the one hand because, yes, we have seen these negotiations before where the U.S. and Iran and various other countries meet to decide issues that will largely affect Israel's security, and Israel is not represented. I mean, the Americans basically represent Israel, but there's a downside to that for Israel, which is that they have to do whatever Trump says. And, in fact, they have been doing more or less what the Americans have allowed them to do. But the reality is that the Israelis fundamentally understand that they are responsible for their own security. And so I think that reality is dawning on J.D. Vance and on Trump. I think Trump and Vance tried to use peace in Lebanon as a negotiating bargaining chip, and were told by Netanyahu that that's not happening. Mm-hmm. And it's not a question of who's in charge or whatever. The Americans are in charge, but the Israelis are not going to allow Hezbollah back into a position where they can threaten northern Israel. I mean, they are threatening northern Israel, but they're not going to cede the idea that Hezbollah can just establish its presence again in southern Lebanon and continue its military buildup. It's just never going to happen. So if Israel has to defy the Trump administration, they're going to do that. And I think that's sort of slowly dawning. I mean, you saw yesterday Trump saying that Hezbollah had to cut it out, which is a shift, right? Because he's been attacking Israel. He and Vance have been criticizing Israel. Vance especially. I mean, I think his words were particularly ugly, unusually ugly for such a close ally. But I think they tried to basically push Israel to make concessions to allow this deal to happen, and then realized what Israel was saying was correct, which is that Israel is not the problem. I mean, Israel would not be in Lebanon had Hezbollah not attacked Israeli villages. And so the Israelis are saying, look, we have this territory we're occupying in Lebanon right now. It's the high ground, physically the high ground, which is the key issue. And we're not going to give it up because we keep finding bases and underground weapons caches and all kinds of things. And we're not going to let the Iranians just rearm this terrorist group. So you guys can decide whatever you want in Switzerland. It's just not happening. And, I think that that's dawning on the American team, who knows though? Like nobody really knows if a deal is possible anymore because the Iranians are being given what I thought was a pretty good deal, and I thought it actually could be a good deal for the United States, as you point out. I mean, $300 billion of investment in Iran. It's great for Iran. It's probably good for us as well, because if we can control the direction of that investment, we can make sure that Iran develops in a certain way. We can help grow the Iranian economy so that it becomes much bigger than what the terrorist supporting state of Iran has been running up until now. But if Iran walks away from that, I mean, what do? You basically have to say, okay, the regime is the problem. I mean,
yes,
yeah,
as if that was an unknown up until this point. I mean, just to put some point of order on what you mentioned, this Hezbollah terror tunnel that Israel just unearthed, 200-meter long tunnel discovered by the 51st Reserve Brigade, 550, whatever, by the Israelis, contained 20 terrorists who were eliminated, 4 launch shafts, dozens of drones, some of which can reach deep into Israeli territory. I mean, so and you know, significant weapons caches and strategic positions by these terrorist groups to, you know, commit the acts of terrorism that they commit, which is why Bibi Netanyahu at the Jewish News Syndicate Summit had this to say about the Israeli presence in southern Lebanon, as you just mentioned.
As long as we need to protect our people, we will remain in the security zone in South Lebanon. And the reason is perfectly understood. No country would be asked to do otherwise. Now, you imagine the United States. Across the border, you have thousands, an army of thousands of terrorists who pellet your cities and your towns with rockets and ballistic missiles and killer drones. They kill your soldiers, they kill your citizens, they kill your children, and they threaten them every day. Well, what would America do? Would it say, well, there's nothing we can do? Let's hold our fire? Is that what America would say? No. You know damn well what America would do. It would cross the border, create a security zone, kill the terrorists, and protect its people until the threat is removed. That's exactly what we are doing.
I think it's a pretty good analogy he uses in terms of what would America do if this was the situation. Actually, Bruce Pearl, the former basketball coach of Auburn, said the same thing. If you were having rockets lobbed into Detroit by terrorists in Toronto, what would America do? Say, have a third party come in and negotiate some sort of armistice or take out the threat?
Well, let's just back up for a second. So the key point in that news dispatch you read about the discovery of the tunnel was that it was discovered by a reserve brigade. What is a reserve brigade in the Israeli military? The entire adult male population of Israel between the ages of 21 and 45 is in the military reserves, which means people do their duty a couple of days a month, several weeks a year. And in a time of war, they get called up for months at a time. So you're talking about husbands, fathers, sons, people leaving their jobs, people leaving their communities to go and fight in Lebanon. They are fighting this war in a way that's very hard for us to relate to because we do not have that level of exposure to combat. I mean, if that were happening here, you know, you and I might be at the front and not talking on a radio show. So it's a war that Israelis have been fighting in a very intimate way, and they're not going to be told that they can't secure their homes from these terrorists who are sitting on a mountaintop. Again, if you go to Israel, what you can see is that the border of Lebanon is an arbitrary line, and the Lebanese mountains are higher than the Israeli terrain. That's the provocation, in a sense, because it becomes easy from those mountains to fire down on the Israeli towns in the valley below. And that's why Israel has taken those mountains, because after quiet on the border for many decades, since the 2007 conflict, really for 2 decades, Hezbollah joined Hamas in attacking Israeli villages and firing drones and rockets and everything, and those towns had to be evacuated. And so the Israeli military has had to go into Lebanon to clear out the Hezbollah terrorists, and it's done a pretty good job, but there's a lot more to do. they're not going to give that up. I mean, this is something that, just think about it. If you and your neighbors had gone into a terrorist hellhole, risked your lives, maybe never seeing your families again, and you had fought to discover these tunnels and kill these terrorists and face drone attacks and rockets and everything that would come along with it, and bullets and everything, are you going to go and just give that up? Are you going to go home and say, well, Trump said that we're going to give up this territory that we fought for to protect our families? You're not going to do that. So I think J.D. Vance and Trump were very glib in kind of dismissing this idea that Israel was going to have to win in Lebanon. And also, it's been the American policy for many years that Hezbollah is an obstacle to the development of the Lebanese state. So we want Hezbollah out of there so we can develop a strong, united Lebanon. And
so do the Lebanese.
Well, right. And so where Trump and J.D. Vance were going with this was saying, well, maybe we can sort of accept some kind of ceasefire and let Hezbollah stay there for now so we can get the broader deal. Maybe if the broader deal were really good and Iran was playing ball. But Iran is not playing ball. So now you're basically running against America's defined national security interest in having a strong Lebanese state because you're allowing Iran to maintain its terrorist proxy there. Look, this is basically a successful war, but like many wars, we are at risk of losing peace because we are not. We have a lot of challenges in this negotiation. The most profound challenge is actually not even a foreign challenge. The most profound challenge is the domestic policy situation here in the United States, where Democrats have been completely opposed to this war. There's a midterm election coming up. They are nominating crazy candidates. I mean, actually crazy people with Nazi tattoos and who support terrorists. And I mean, we have never seen a more extremist group of candidates. Even the moderates, the once moderates, are becoming extreme to run in this midterm election and position themselves ahead of 2028. So Trump is facing this unique challenge domestically where he has to get through this election. It is possible Republicans will retain both houses of Congress, but it is going to be very difficult. And you can't do that if gas prices are still high and people are worried about inflation. So he's had to manage that. He also has to manage the Arab states who want to fight and defeat Iran, but also don't want to be seen as being too close to Israel and maybe don't have the ability to defend themselves the way Israel does, and so they're more exposed when Iran fires missiles at them. They can't exactly shoot all of them down or fight back, and so Trump is basically hurting all these cats.
Yeah, I know, but you know what builds consensus is leadership. And instead of trying to placate everybody, you need to pick a position and execute it. Pick a position that's well considered and execute it. And I'm a little I'm so much confused on this. Particularly the recent talk about the Strait, all the jawboning after Iran was playing games. They closed the Strait. No, they didn't close the Strait because they don't have the capacity to close the Strait. Okay, well, if they don't have the capacity to close the Strait, then why didn't we take it? If they don't play ball, if they leave the negotiating table, then we're going to take the Strait. We're going to impose tolls. We're going to take 20% of the oil. Okay, well, if we can do that, then why didn't we already do it? What is all this dithering with this group that you understand exactly who they are, exactly the games they've been playing, despite J.D. Vance's absurd rhetoric about turning over a new leaf and realizing the last 47 years of their posture towards America was a mistake? Why don't you finish the deal as it's been argued?
Because finishing the deal would require a level of military commitment that the American public doesn't support at the moment. So what Trump is doing and what J.D. Vance is doing generally is maybe the best strategy. Maybe it's better not to have a clear set of objectives and a clear plan, and maybe it's better to continue in this ambiguous way, at least through the midterm elections, because if you adopt a clear plan for invading Iran and knocking over the regime, which is what some people, including myself, would be amenable to, you're asking for a level of military commitment before a midterm election that may not fly. And so, the thing is not to accept a bad deal. You don't have to get the best deal right now. Look at the historical precedent here. We had to fight wars against these Barbary states 250 years ago almost, near the start of the nation, where these Islamic caliphates were seizing American ships and demanding tribute. I mean, a very similar situation. And we fought one war, and then we concluded a very weak peace. It was very weak, and you might even say that the Barbary states won. But we got our Navy out there. We fought some victories, and then we weren't strong enough to drive the thing to completion. But we had a second Barbary War, which did finally finish off the threat. That may be a situation like the one we're facing now. And I think that what Trump is trying to do is find some accommodation that gets him through the election, because, frankly, the Democrats are Iran's best asset right now. And then once the election is over, then you decide the direction this is going to take and finish it one way or the other. But the one group of people that is dealing with a reality that is just concrete and is immovable, again, is the Israelis. They're not going to leave Lebanon, not while Hezbollah is still there. So I think Trump and J.D. Vance are starting to realize there are some boundaries to how much ambiguity and how much you can promise and all that.
Yeah.
I do hope Vance changes his rhetoric. I think he is unduly influenced by the imaginary hordes of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens devotees online who seem to think that, you know, Israel is the reason for every problem. I've talked to some of the J.D. Vance people, and they think that's a real political force that they have to somehow cultivate. I think it's a bunch of keyboard commandos who don't represent any constituency and are, you know, in it for the laughs and the entertainment, but they're not really anything in particular.
I would agree with that, but I would also say, even to the extent they are, they should be given no quarter. I mean, whether they represent some political constituency that's 1%, 5%, 10%, I really don't care. That sort of nonsense and ignorance cannot be given any quarter, in my view. And I think I'm appalled by the way that J.D. Vance has, not just on the question of Israel, but I'm appalled with what I've seen from him over the last week. I mean, I know he's a smart guy and he's a good communicator. None of that has been demonstrated over the last week, in my view.
So the thing that he needed to do when it came to disagreements with Israel, and it's understandable that we'd have some because we have different interests, they are exposed in a very direct way to some of these threats. We are not. We have to look at the bigger picture. They might not be able to. I think he should have said, instead of, well, you know, we're the only friend you have, and so therefore you have to be nicer to us, or whatever he said. I would start from his own experience as a soldier and say, listen, I've been in combat. I know what it's like to put your life on the line, and I know how Israelis are feeling because they've had to risk everything for their security, and they want it to mean something.
Mm-hmm.
In a war, everything means something. You know, you lose friends, you want those sacrifices to accomplish something and not just go unnoticed or just have people die in vain. I know that. I know where you are. At the same time, you guys are so close to the action that we need to step back together and see the bigger picture. You might want to do things a certain way, but we are trying to get a better deal for everybody. And so trust President Trump's leadership. That's how I would have said it, instead of this kind of condescending, hectoring lectures, which are designed to impress, you know, these yahoos online, and they don't actually impress anyone in the real world. They drive a wedge between Israel and Iran, a kind of Obama-style wedge, which is how we got here in the first place. Between Israel and the United States against Iran. I mean,
well, and also, that the chumminess with the Qataris and the Pakistanis, and you know, and the statement. In addition to those statements, they don't get you any currency with the IRGC or any of their intermediaries or any of their proxies. You're not winning it. You're not gonna have a charm and cash is not what is going to end this favorably for the United States, and that's the way J.D. Vance comes off as thinking to me so far. Joel Pollak, opinion editor at the California Post. Joel, good to talk to you as always. Thank you.
You too.
And he joined us on the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer. It's news, opinion, and insight at the speed of your life. Streaming at 560theanswer.com on the AM 560 mobile app, or tell your smart speaker to play